Did you know that Canada has zero laws against abortion? There are no restrictions on your ability to access the right to murder the unborn child in your womb. If you want to have an abortion up until the minute before your baby is about to pass through the birth canal, you can. Now, fortunately, not everybody provides that, but it's not illegal. You could ask for it, and some people will have to fulfill your wishes. Did you know that our bedfellows in this lawlessness are North Korea and China? That's right. There's three major countries that have zero laws against abortion, and it's us, China, and North Korea. Incredible bedfellows, Canada. This is super important stuff that you need to know. Far too people don't know that there are no laws, but that is the fact of the matter. And yet we have a federal government who likes to say often in their talking points that we're going to expand access to abortion. How do you expand access to something that already has zero limits on it? Well, they find a way. They find a way, and they are going after this talking point again and again because they're out there campaigning, and the thing that they need, abortion-loving women my age mostly, they need you to hear constantly that conservatives are trying to take away your right to choose, your choice, your rights. And it's all just because they're using you. They're using you. They think that you are dumb. They think you are low-hanging fruit. They don't think you're going to do any more research on the topics that actually affect your everyday life, because hopefully, Lord willing, the need for an abortion is not affecting your everyday life, because that is a you problem. That is not a Canada problem. They are banking on, again, mostly women my age and a bit older, to have one reason why they vote. And this is happening in the States too. And it is for women's rights. It is for the right to access something that most people hope to never need. Yet they'll come out and say things like, I quote Mark Garrettson, a Liberal MP, who said something like, well, when my daughter's older, I want to know that she will have access to reproductive health services, which is an abortion. Because this isn't about your health. This is about ending your pregnancy. This is about preventing you from becoming a parent. This isn't about your health. This is about you've already reproduced, and now we want to end that. We want to abort that. Abort mission. You need to take this information. You need to tell everybody. So that's what this episode is all about. Hello, and welcome back to All Angles with Allie, the ironically named podcast where I don't plan on giving you all angles. I just plan on giving you mine. My name is Allie Spencer. I am a Christian, Canadian, lowercase c conservative, and I'm kind of like your sassy, opinionated friend that's going to help you understand what's going on in the Canadian political landscape. So thanks so much for joining and listening. I appreciate you being here. I just ate an entire bowl of Pink Lady apples with cream cheese blended with a little bit of brown sugar and cinnamon. So I am happy girl to go into a very difficult subject. And I think this one is super important. And it's something that, I feel like I start every podcast by being like, this is something not a lot of Canadians know about, because the Canadians just don't know a lot about a lot of things. And that's entirely the motivation for having this podcast, not as if I'm like some super intelligent arbiter of information. I just am curious, and I don't like being lied to, and I don't like being used. And so today, what a way to set it up. Today we're talking about the second most important topic, I believe, after eternity and salvation, and that is abortion. It's not a favorite subject of mine because I like it. It's a favorite subject of mine because it's super important. I think that it is something that especially Christians need to be equipped with way more information on. And I think that there are far too many Christians that look and sound like the world when it comes to this subject. And it is fully in agreement with the evil one. And so that's why the fact that our country not only just allows, it actually promotes unlimited access to abortion. And the Trudeau Liberals have gone out of their way. They go out of their way as often as they possibly can to say that the most important thing to them is reproductive right. That has scare quotes around it for those of you just listening. Reproductive rights and women's rights. And the great irony is that they are anything but those actual things. What abortion really is when you have already reproduced and you are canceling, halting, aborting that reproduction. It is anti-reproductive rights. They're also not rights. You don't have the right to take a life. You don't have the right to not have consequences to your choice of having sex You made your choice. That is the choice. Women's rights, also a complete fallacy. Women have the incredible and innate and miraculous ability to not only create, but carry life in them. And the fact that we call the idea that you could end the potential of that life. All right. I'll even meet you, not necessarily you, listener, although if you are somebody who's on the other side of this conversation, I really appreciate you being curious enough to listen to this. But that idea that a woman's right is to go against the very thing, her very nature and ability to bring forth life, the potential of life. And I'll work with that narrative. I obviously believe, just it should be obvious that I believe that as soon as the sperm meets the egg and there's an explosion of iron and that is suddenly called an embryo, that is a human life, whether it's viable or not. That doesn't matter. If it's not a life, if it's not a human by that point, then what is it? You don't look at a pregnant horse and say, oh, can't wait to find out what's coming out of that horse eventually. Or nobody debates whether when someone is pregnant, they're not saying, well, it's a baby or it's a fetus. Like, you're not having fetus showers, So if it's not a human, then what is it? And that, like, let's just scrap that malarkey. It's so ludicrous. It's mental gymnastics. When I hear that, I'm like, man, so many educated, really dumb people, because you have to be jumping through hoops in order to come to the conclusion that it's not a life, that it's not a human. It just doesn't make any sense. And for all the trust the science people, you don't trust the science because you don't have any biological evidence, credence that can back up some kind of claim that that's anything but human. So we're done away with that argument. If you want to talk about clump of cells, yeah, it's a clump of cells. I'm a clump of cells. This mic's a clump of cells. The camera I'm recording on is a clump of cells. It's all clump of cells. So also a terrible argument. And just while I'm at it, the other one that rattles my cage is recently a lot of pro-aborts, because they're not pro-choice, you're pro-abortion. The pro-aborts that say that, conservatives in, let's say, overthrowing Roe v. Wade, which is going to be celebrating 2-year anniversary this month in June 2024, people that try to say the conservatives are, taking away women's rights and they're getting involved in women's business, blah, 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 it's exactly the opposite. The entire premise of overthrowing Roe v. Wade is to put the power back into a local government's hands rather than having the entire country define what it means to have access to abortion or whatever. It's literally saying, hey, you live in this state and you have certain values living in this state. Where do you align as a population, as a local population on this subject? It is granting more autonomy to the people within each given state. Now, of course, if you're a pro-abort living in Louisiana, well, yeah, you might be surrounded by people who don't feel the same as you. No duh. You probably encounter a lot of opposition on many subjects. Now, if you live in Oregon and you're pro-abort, then woo, you get to live in an echo chamber. Right? This is how it works. Often people move to places that reflect their values better. Not rocket science. Anyways, the argument that I've been hearing a lot over the last 2 years especially has been that anyone trying to restrict abortion is forcing women to have birth or forcing women to give birth. And that is the stupidest of all the arguments. That just shows right away that you have no idea what an abortion is. And it's weird because I've seen this posted by people who very much know what birth is. And what happens in an abortion is either you are induced, given some kind of chemical drug that is going to send your body into labor, or you're going to have a physical intervention like scissors or a massive syringe shoved up your birth canal, your vagina, in order to inject the clump of cells, fetus, embryo, baby with poison, or to dismember that whatever you want to call it. But right now we're talking about the woman's body having scissors shoved up it, having limbs cut off of whatever it is that she conceived when she chose to have sex. And then the body needs to get rid of that. Unfortunately, as much as the pro-aborts want you to think that that clump of cells just disintegrates, it just turns into glitter and just gets absorbed by your body. It doesn't. No, your body needs to birth whatever was in there. And that often is very bloody and very painful. And something I may not get to touch on today, but here's a little, I don't know, a little freebie, is that the chemical abortion pill that they are constantly trying to push now, because you can basically just call a number and they send these pills to you, and then you get to go through the abortion on your own in your home. You labor and bleed out something that looks an awful lot like the human that you saw in biology class. I know as a kid, I was like obsessed with books about the stages of development in the womb. And then all of a sudden you are pushing out, or your body is releasing this fetus that looks a lot like a human, a lot like a baby, onto your shower floor or into your toilet. And so now these women have to encounter the space of their trauma every time they need to relieve themselves or bathe. The cruelty of the abortion industry, which is what it is. I mean, less so in Canada than it is in America, because America is Planned Parenthood and a lot of those are taxpayer funded. But like, obviously we know in Canada, in our socialist communist nation, everything is taxpayer funded. So we can all have this great illusion that it's free. Ugh, that's annoying in itself. But then you have women having to face the trauma of whether they have, I don't believe most women that would say that doesn't have leave some kind of impression on them, to see what now looks like a baby in their toilet on the floor of their shower that they have to scoop up and then put it in the garbage. I think this is worth going hard on, because we don't think this through very often. And if anybody is pro women, that should be the easiest thing to defend. It should be the easiest thing in the world to defend. I want as few people on this planet to experience that. I want as few women in my life to ever have to walk through something like that. I never want a woman I know, or any woman, to experience, oh my gosh, I thought that this was just a way that I could not be pregnant. I have friends that have gone through abortions, and they talk about their way that they were treated at the abortion clinic. Man, I'm not even into my content today, but I believe this is still going to help people to really paint a picture of what we're talking about. I have friends that when she got an abortion, it was very painful. And after the procedure was done, the physical procedure, they sent her out into the waiting room to sit on a cold folding chair with a bunch of other sad girls in this gray building. And it's the cold folding chair that I cannot get over, that you have just put something up a woman's vagina in order to kill the child that would have been. And she's bleeding, she's sore. A lot of times they need to wear diapers, or they bleed for weeks. And you send her out to sit on a cold steel chair. The abortion industry and the way that our government, the Canadian government, props up this cruelty should be the easiest thing in the world to want to prevent women from ever experiencing. The level of cruelty and abuse that goes on within the abortion industry should be the easiest thing for us to want to prevent against. We should be doing everything in our power to ensure that women are never put in a situation where they need or want an abortion. The Trudeau Liberals are vehemently anti-choice. They are abortion extremists. There is no option. It is only abortion. If you are somebody facing a pregnancy that's unplanned, maybe even unwanted, they do not believe that you should have the support systems and the network and the nourishment, the love, the care that could be available to you. They are constantly threatening to close down, come after, take the charitable status away from pregnancy care centers centers that see thousands of families, because they do wraparound supports, come into community, be taught how to raise children, be like resourced with diapers and food and community. And the Trudeau Liberals do not support that. These pregnancy care centers get zero government dollars. They are fully supported by churches and ministries and people that care about women. The Trudeau Liberals and those who support them and the pro-abortion extremists and any abortion lover, you do not love women. You do not care about women. You care about your selfish lives. You care about having access to be able to make whatever decisions that you're going to make and then not have to deal with the consequences of it. A pro-choice argument is the choosing to have sex. Less than 1% of all abortions are from rape and incest. This is not an argument you can use. Abortions are because people use it as a means of birth control. It's out of convenience. It's out of preference. We're going to talk about sex selective abortions. It's out of preference as well. Like, I already have 3 kids. I don't want a 4th. Oh, I'm too old, or medical conditions. Like, my friend who had breast cancer and was also pregnant was asked like 3 times if she wanted an abortion. This is about people who are having sex, knowingly having sex, ending up pregnant, and then being like, I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to bring a child into this world. The funny thing is that an abortion is always rooted in you don't want the end result, which you all know. It's a child. That's why people are seeking abortions, is because they don't want a child. So again, no matter what it is in the womb, you don't want a child. So what is it? You know what it is. I want to talk about a relevant recent clip from the abortion-loving Trudeau government. This is from a media scrum after a recent announcement with Chrystia Freeland. I like to call her Prison Land. She's the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada and also the Finance Minister, which is crazy because she has no financial experience. She's a journalist, a WEF board member. Also, Marcy Ian, who is a former TV personality turned Minister of Women's Issues. I'm just going to play a bit of Christia's response, and then we're going to get into Marcy Ian's response, because I think that's where the golden nuggets for today's conversation are. So here.
Our government absolutely believes in a woman's right to choose. Women's rights are human rights. And as a human, as a woman, as a mother of daughters, there is no right more fundamental for every woman, for every girl in Canada, than the right to control your own body. And our government will always stand up for that. One of the things that I am very proud of in this budget is making prescriptive contraceptives free to all Canadians. And that's really important. As we were putting that together, I spoke to a gynecologist, obstetrician gynecologist, and she said to me that every month in her practice, she sees a young woman, a teenager, who is pregnant and doesn't want to be, and is pregnant because she couldn't afford to buy contraceptives and didn't have the money herself, maybe afraid to ask her parents. Those unwanted pregnancies, which are happening in Canada today, are a tragedy for the young woman, for her family, for our whole country, and I am really glad we are taking steps to end that.
Wow, imagine that. It's bad for the whole country. Yes, because we must protect the system. Yeah, we must protect the system. If you have an unwanted child, then they could end up being a burden on the system. And in Canada, socialist Canada, we must worship almighty universal health care. We must protect the system. So abort your child for the system, because it could affect all of Canada. A bit of context of what's going on here is that you may have heard of the NDP Liberal Coalition, which is called the Supply and Confidence Agreement. Very few things are supplied and there's absolutely no confidence, but that's what it's called. And so what it is that Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, the third party, soon to be fifth party, and basically a defunct, bankrupt federal party. Good job, Jagmeet, but at least he's going to get his pension and a new Rolex. He made a deal 2 years ago during the Freedom Convoy with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for all kinds of things that never came to fruition. So funny how you can make this massive deal that keeps the government in government, that keeps us from having another election despite plummeting polls and overall terrible ratings for Justin Trudeau. He's kept him in government based on a few things that haven't come to fruition until this most recent budget, where the Liberals said that they would include this pharma plan that the NDP have been asking for, and they've been asking for diabetes drugs and oral contraceptives to be covered in a $1 billion plan. Now, my understanding is that the budget says essentially we're going to have a conversation about having a conversation about the pharmacare plan. It seems in more recent days, and honestly, I just haven't caught up with it because I don't care. It's just more thievery. It sounds like they're going to roll it out. What is super interesting about this is, well, one, it's a very small population that need those drugs. For example, oral contraceptives are for what part of the population? Like, let's say 15 to 35-year-old women. That's not a huge driving force of the population, but we are going to have a $1 billion plan so that people can feel like they're getting their drugs for free, even though they're already not very expensive. I believe they're like $30 a month. If it's super important for you, person, to be ingesting that poison on a daily basis, then there you go. You're going to get your free drugs, all so that we can keep this government in power. If you're interested in learning more about how birth control is ruining your body and has been ruining women's bodies for decades, then I would strongly recommend you catch up on Alex Clark's podcast, because she's had several really good conversations with different doctors and people who are hormone experts about the effects of chemical birth control on the woman's body. Maybe it's worth saying right here, I'm not against birth control. I'm not some kind of Christian, or Catholics tend to do this more, that's like, oh, you should have no interventions to prevent pregnancy. I don't believe that. I just think that so much of what we are talking about publicly hinges on keeping people really stupid about the way that their bodies work. When you learn that your cycle means that you can only really get pregnant like maybe 6 days out of the entire month, but it's actually like the 3 days that you're ovulating, it's just that sperm can live in the body for 24 hours. You are keeping people stupid. And so much of this propaganda, fear mongering, the constant repetition of the narrative hinges on people not understanding how their body works. And that to me would be the most empowering thing. Like, imagine you're a 25-year-old woman, you track your cycle, you are able to say to your partner, like, I'm not even trying to be a prude about this, whoever he is, a one night stand or your boyfriend or your husband, you can say, hey, like, I need you to wear protection tonight because I'm ovulating, or because I'm going to be ovulating soon, so I need you to wear protection. You actually have 22 days out of the month where you are very, very unlikely to be able to get pregnant. And if women understood that, how much more empowering would that be, not only for women, but also for men that can say, they can understand their women better. Like, it would drastically change the way that we relate and the way that relationships are. It would be very, very powerful. But no, we need to keep you stupid, and we need you to believe that you must base your vote on having access to something that most people hope to never have to experience. They're banking on women my age to be so tunnel visioned on the idea of women's rights and abortion that, and again, it's something that most people are not like, oh, I can't wait till my next abortion. They're like, I hope I never need it, but I want to make sure that it's there when I do. Well, if you empower yourself and you educate yourself, then you never need to be in a situation where that's something that you have to seek. And I repeat, rape and incest make up less than 1% of the reason why people seek abortions. So it's not a good argument. Okay, you have homework already in the middle of this podcast. You need to go, I'll even link it below, Alex Clark's podcasts with different doctors about birth control. You need to figure that out. You need to download a period tracking app. I like to use one called Flow app, I think. Again, I'll put down some recommendations. Start tracking your cycle and seeing where you are. And then if you are in a relationship or you're married or whatever, you can know, hey, is my body even able to create a life right now based on the stage I'm at in the cycle? Be like, oh, I'm not. Amazing. You can have unprotected sex, have at her, whatever. Isn't that way more empowering than going and needing to get scissors shoved up your vagina so it can chop your non-baby clump of cells into a bunch of little pieces that then have to come out of you some way? You know, like this I don't know why I have to be making this argument. This should be something that is taught in schools. But no, because they're banking on keeping us stupid. So that was Christia's response. Also loved when she said that women's rights are human rights, which again, based on the subject, you know, that is a wild thing to say if you're not going to acknowledge that what is being aborted is a human and a woman is uniquely equipped to carry and bring life. You're right, it is a human rights issue, but we have changed the definition of what is human worth protecting. So I want to get into Marcy Ian's response. Again, she's the Minister of Women's Issues. And this is, I think, really where things take off in terms of talking politics and what's happening right now in our political landscape.
I'm going to reiterate what Chris just said, and thank you very much for the question because it's an important one. And when people show you who they are, and Maya Angelou said this, you believe them the first time. And this is a conservative playbook that we keep seeing played over and over again. So whether it's Arnold Viersen, whether it's Kathy Wagenthal, whoever it is, a woman's right to choose is something that has been in the crosshairs of the conservative government and certain members for a long time. We're talking about choice here, and it's important to center that. That means you can do what you want to do, and I can do what I want to do. And to shut down choice, or to try to, and a woman's right to choose says a lot. And I thank you for the question because it needs to come up all the time so that Canadians understand when it comes to choice, they have a choice too. This is a government that will never compromise on a woman's right to choose, never. But we see from the Conservatives that it keeps coming up, and it comes up in different ways, whether it's a petition or a bill, or it keeps coming up. So clearly, this is part of the program. As Chris just said, they have been on the lawn, you know, in Ottawa, West Block, and said exactly who they are. And so I put that question to Canadians. When people show you, believe them. Believe them the first time.
And in much the same way, I would say when the Liberals tell you and show you who they are, believe them. Here are some examples of how the Trudeau Liberals are completely anti-choice. They force MPs to vote against their conscience. There are no free votes on the subject of abortion within the Liberal caucus. If there is a caucus member that may be Catholic, for example, they do not have a free vote to say that they support different bills that may protect the life of a preborn child. And that takes me perfectly into two different bills that the Liberals have voted unanimously against. The first one was Bill C-233, and it is the Sex Selective Abortion Act. Do you know that in Canada, we still have a son preference? That is that there are hundreds of baby girls that go missing every single year because families choose to abort a child when they find out that it is a girl. This is something you hear about happening in third world countries, right? Well, here in Canada, we still see a discrepancy in the ratios between the number of boys born versus the number of girls. The average is about 106 boys to 100 girls. That is what the ratio should be. But in Canada, we see a ratio of 116 boys born to 100 girls. That ratio is not natural. And the Liberals voted against a bill that would restrict physicians from providing abortion. I hate the word providing. That would restrict physicians from providing abortion based on the sex of the child. They voted against that. Similarly, the Trudeau Liberals unanimously voted down Bill 311, which is the Protecting Pregnant Women and Their Babies from Violence bill. This would have been a change to the criminal code so that If a woman was the victim of domestic violence or a traffic accident and she was pregnant, that there would be a charge not only for her life, but also for the loss of the life in the womb. This stemmed from a story of a man who, I believe it was his wife, his pregnant wife, was violently beaten to the point of death, and he lost both his wife and his child. And this is a bill that should be, a very easy thing for people that are so pro-woman to get behind, right? If a woman is the victim of domestic violence to the point where she is killed as well as her child, that should be acknowledged. It's not just the taking of one life, it's the taking of two. Now, of course, that's a backdoor to getting to the pro-life objective, right? That's how they said this. So when a family is planning for the birth of their child and a woman is the victim of incredible violence and her life as well as the potential baby's life are taken, instead of acknowledging that there is two lives that are victims of that violence, they voted down that bill when the pregnant woman is the subject of domestic. Another issue that surrounds the abortion conversation is how many abortions are actually coerced or forced on women, whether it's by their partner or their pimp or society at large, making it feel like they couldn't possibly bring a child into this world. You don't have enough money. Life is expensive. You don't have a support network, etc., etc. If people don't know about these pregnancy care centers, they would only hear the messaging that you can't possibly be a parent if you are not equipped and you don't have plethoras of money or people to walk alongside you or anything like that. There are plenty of abortions that are done out of coercion, where women are forced to end the life in their womb. And when a bill was presented about that as well, the Liberals voted against it. So this super pro-woman caucus that is only allowed to think one way and does very little to actually protect vulnerable women who are in a position where they are carrying life, trying to figure out what their future looks like. The only option the Trudeau Liberals are willing to provide to those women is to kill your child. That's it. Now, this is a good time to shout out all the heroes that are working in this space, and I've met many of them. People who are so dedicated and diligent. They are constantly on the chopping block. They are constantly hearing that their funding is going to be taken away, their charitable status is going to be taken away, they're going to be shut down, they're going to be found out, they're going to be raided. This all happens in Canada. That is a big part of this anti-choice conversation. When Marcy Ian says you can do you and I can do me, there's none of that. If she was to be confronted by some of these heroes that run pregnancy care centers that say, hey, women, like, come in here, let's have a cup of tea. And I know these people, come have a cup of tea. Let's chat. What are the struggles you're facing? How can we give you wraparound supports? How can we get you plugged in? What is it that you're scared of? What is it that you feel like you're not able to provide that child? And they love on them. And my friend recently was visiting one of these pregnancy care centers, and within an hour of being there, there were at least 3 girls that she saw come into the wrong location. They were probably like 21 years old and so nonchalant about seeking an abortion. And that should break our hearts. Like, I just don't think you even need to be pro-life to be like, why would you want any 21-year-old to be in that situation? Why would we want anyone to go through this? There's no prevention or education or equipping people to not have to be in that situation. Yeah, you want to provide oral contraceptives. Okay, like, I guess there's one thing, even though, as I've said, I think that it's poison. I think it's terrible for people's bodies, for women's hormones. It's terrible. It potentially sterilizes you. That's another thing. Planned Parenthood has been caught down dosing people's contraceptives so that people do get pregnant, and then they need to go to Planned Parenthood and seek the abortion services that they provide. Do you think about, like, that's a fact. Government provided oral contraceptives? Like, we should trust nothing the government does. Has that not been clear over the last few years? Let's drop one more hot button word into all this, and that is misogyny. So much of the abortion debate hinges on releasing men from any kind of responsibility. Don't you hear that it's always a women's rights? Because it's a woman's responsibility to get rid of that child. It's a woman's responsibility to raise that child if she chooses to not have the abortion that we've made so readily and easily available to her. Where are the men? And similar to birth control, when it came out years ago, it didn't actually make people's relationships better. It actually just meant that men could do whatever they wanted with no consequences. And so the idea of constantly pushing abortion is similarly releasing men of their responsibility to be fathers and to be providers and protectors. They can sleep with whoever they want and deal with zero consequences. Well, you're a woman, you live in Canada, go get an abortion. Go get an abortion. What are you talking about? What's the big deal? It's free. What's the issue? It's free. So there's that side of things. And then there's also the misogyny, which I kind of touched on in my last episode, where we were talking about, oh, you're just a housewife, you're just a homemaker. Many women are innately wired for to mother, to carry life. It's saying, don't do that. Don't do that. That's going to restrict your career. That's going to change your life. Instead, live like a man, pursue your career, do whatever you want, sleep around with no consequences. It's misogyny. It is taking away the things that are innately beautiful about being a woman. And it's saying, don't be that. Be the opposite. Be something else. That is misogyny. And the last thing I want to leave here is how this abortion obsession fuels colonization. Whew, didn't think we'd go there. Yeah, we're hitting on all the things today. The Canadian government sends millions of dollars through different NGOs in order to promote and supersede the government and cultural values of nations all over the world. I think particularly about West Africa because I know people that work there in reproductive health, and the entire idea is providing underground abortions for people who want them. Here's the thing, is that African nations don't tend to have the same belief system that we have here in Canada and in North America. Most people are not confused about what happens when you are pregnant. They're not confused about gender. They're not confused about sex. For the majority of people, their cultural values are that it is life and it is worth protecting. But we are going to take our so progressive, so educated and intelligent views and say, you guys are kind of uncivilized, hey? So we're really progressive and we're going to introduce abortion to you, even though your culture and your government says that it is illegal. And they do that through an organization called Marie Stopes. You should look it up. There's also several others, but they're very boastful at Marie Stopes about how they go around what is legal in order to provide this to people. And that is colonization. You are taking things that are norms and belief systems here, and you are projecting them onto people who do not share those values. And you are saying, this is how it should be. Stop being so old-fashioned. Stop being so religious. And adopt our way of life, adopt our way of thinking. And so those are some of the ways that the Liberal government is vehemently anti-choice and abortion extremists. They do not want you to think you have options. You don't have options. To just give you a few more stats on abortion in Canada, there are 85,000 to 100,000 abortions performed every year. That is 2 Scotiabank arenas filled with children that should be here, but they are not. And just to quickly go over the Conservative Party's stance on abortion, because this is extremely disappointing as well. Pierre Poilievre is status quo on this situation. He is the same as Justin Trudeau on this topic. And that is why I start off my podcast by saying that I am a lowercase c conservative, because I don't want to be a shill for the Conservative Party. And because this is one of the biggest issues for me, the fact that he is unwilling to touch the abortion subject, that's cowardly to me. And also, it really matters what a federal government is willing to fund and spend money on and the values of a nation. I am a faith-filled believer of Christ. I believe that because life starts at conception, that it is intrinsically valuable from that moment. And because of that, I believe that this 100,000 lives that are taken, innocent lives that are taken every single year, means that we are the devil's playground. This is dark, but I fully believe that the devil is like, wow, Canada, you guys are really doing my work for me. You slaughter thousands of children. You're adamantly anti-God and secular, which is not neutral. I'm just going to go on vacation. I think the devil is on vacation because he knows that the Canadian population are just going to do his work for him. It should deeply grieve us as Christians. This should be one of the biggest subjects for all of us because it is literally life or death. It's life or death. And we can talk about salvation and eternity, and those things are incredibly important. But as long as we allow the taking of innocent lives, we have blood on our hands. All of us. There should be deep repentance and grief for this. And I admire a lot of American evangelists and revivalists like Lou Engle and Jesse Green, who spend a significant portion of their ministry talking about interceding on behalf of their nation in order to protect the lives of innocent unborn children. Also should mention Russell Johnson from Seattle. He's amazing too. And Jeff Tharp and the Elijah Fire team. There are many people who have spent decades of their lives just praying to see breakthrough on the subject of abortion and to save the lives of unborn children. And that is why Roe v. Wade was so significant. It came out of nowhere, but these people who have devoted so much of their life to praying against this finally saw breakthrough. And we praise God for that. Roe v. Wade it was a big move because it undid already a very, very bad federal law. And it put the ownership in the state's hands to determine what their local values would be about abortion. Now, of course, we've seen some states go really, really far on it. We've also seen other states like Texas say, have the heartbeat law. As long as there's a heartbeat, that there is no abortion allowed. We've seen a significant decrease in the number of abortions that have been sought. That is a win. And they've also seen incredible increase in the support that pregnancy care centers have been receiving, and that is a win. So much of this is based on our cult that is so isolationist that we don't have the village to help us raise children. But when different ministries, churches, and these centers can provide that for families, it makes a world of difference. This is a call to arms. We need to be people who are willing to serve and be the village for women in distress. This isn't just about women on their own having to make these decisions. We know that life is expensive, it's stressful, it's overwhelming. There are many married couples that also seek abortions because they're like, we can't do this. But if they know that there are people and organizations that are surrounding them and resourcing them, that makes a world of difference. There are many different places that are trying to provide these services, and they need your physical help, your financial help, and also your spiritual help. Put this subject on your prayer card. Pray for it every single day and week, that people's hearts would be turned away from abortion and that there would be protection and provision for all these organizations that are serving women and families in this way. The last thing I want to say here is when it comes to our parties and where they stand on the topic of abortion, the Conservatives explicitly say in their policy declaration that you see on the screen is that they will not open the abortion debate. As you can see here, it says a conservative government will not support any legislation to regulate abortion. So as much as I hate that, when you hear Liberal MPs using this as their talking point and beating this drum, know that right now in the policy document for the Conservative Party, that is explicitly what it says. But here is a good thing for us pro-lifers. When it comes to the topic of free votes, they have committed as a party to say that on topics of moral conscience, such as abortion, the definition of marriage, and euthanasia, the Conservative Party acknowledges the diversity of deeply held personal convictions among individual constituents, and they allow their members to vote freely. So this is a very positive thing. I'm glad that this is written out. The votes cannot be whipped on these issues of moral conscience. The fact that they are stipulating that members can vote freely on these moral issues is a really good thing. And to be very clear, once again, the Liberals do not allow this. You have to think the same way of the party. You do not get to have a free vote on issues of moral conscience. There's a lot more that I could say, but I think that is enough for now. I am really passionate about this subject, so I'm sure there'll be part 2, part 3 going on and on. I hope that you will take this information, share it with people you know and love, put life issues on your prayer list, look up those local organizations that are doing this vital and important work, and figure out how you might be able to support them. Or if your church is not doing anything yet with these groups, then suggest it. Talk to your pastors. If the church isn't going to do it, who is? I hope that you will share, like, subscribe, comment on this podcast, this episode. It really helps. I really appreciate it. I thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.